Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, buenos dias, bon dia, bonjour. My name is Franco Famularo and will serve as moderator for this session. Welcome to the 2020 International Leadership Conference, ILC 2020. Our overall conference theme is Opportunity and Hope at a Time of Global Crisis, Interdependence, Mutual Prosperity, and Universal Values. This session is the International Summit Council for Peace, the second of 9 sessions, and will explore the perspectives of heads of state and government and distinguished leaders from political society. If you need translation, please note the interpretation symbol at the bottom of your screen for English, Espanol, Portuguese, and Francais. If you have questions for the panelists, please type them into the chat box, and hopefully we'll get to your questions at the end of the presentations. We are very fortunate to have several distinguished panelists, but our time is limited. Please check the chat box for details of the distinguished speakers' bios. If I introduce each one, we will run out of time, and I have already spoken much too long. To begin, I'd like to introduce Dr. Chiang Shikian, who serves as regional chair for UPF in Central America and the Caribbean. He was one of the founders of the Middle East Peace Initiative, which conducts interfaith activities for the purpose of overcoming the conflicts between religions. Dr. Young, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Famularo. Your Excellencies, Ambassadors for Peace, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear brothers and sisters, good morning. Buenos dias. Thank you for attending this International Leadership Conference 2020 in the middle of your busy schedules and despite the critical situations you are facing with the COVID-19 pandemic. It is my great honor and privilege to host this conference as a part of organizing committee. Today is a historic day as we all remember the September 11, 2001. Today is the 19th anniversary of the destruction of the World Trade Center in New York City by extreme terrorists. Nearly 3,000 of the world's most talented people who were working at the Twin Towers lost their lives. At that moment, Dr. Jenkins and I were having a meeting not far away. We believe Islam is a peace-loving religion, but those radical terrorists were not following the true spirit and the teachings of Islam. We stopped all our events and ran to the ground zero to encourage the rescue workers. 11 days later, on September 22nd, Father Moon, the founder of Universal Peace Federation, invited close to 2,000 religious leaders from all 50 states to Manhattan for special prayer for the nation and the world. We all recognized that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam came from the children of Abraham. Father Moon pointed out that the origin of religious conflicts from the Holy Land. Since then, the Middle East Peace Initiative has undertaken to promote peace through dialogue. So far, more than 30,000 religious and political leaders have visited, guided by UPF International. Finally, Father and Mother Moon founded the Universal Peace Federation in 2005 to support the mission of United Nations for world peace. Since that time, UPF has become the most dynamic and active global peace movement that has been granted general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. UPF has appointed leaders from many different sectors as ambassadors for peace, now totaling more than 100,000 ambassadors around the world working together. Recently, 7 associations have been launched under the UPF umbrella. Among them, the most central role was the World Peace Summit, which has been held since 2013. Finally, we launched ISCP, International Summit Council for Peace, which is this session. Ladies and gentlemen, Latin America and the United States must mutually prosper together, not only geopolitical region. According to the 2019 census, the Hispanic American population in the United States surpassed 60 million, exactly 60.6 million. The majority of new immigrants to the US over the past decade have been from Latin America and the Caribbean. Conversely, many American citizens have relocated to the Central America and the Caribbean, especially retirees. This is just one of many ways in which these two regions are closely interconnected. However, at times when Latin America and the Caribbean were in need, surprisingly, China was the first country to help. For example, when Hurricane Maria hit Jamaica in 2017, small island country, and destroyed 80% of the buildings and the houses, China rushed from thousands of miles away to help. It was not the nearest superpower country, the United States. Recently, China even providing coronavirus test kits free of charge to the Central America and Caribbean nations, such as Panama and Guatemala. According to the report, the United States 2020 defense budget is $732 billion. This is more than the defense budgets of the next 10 countries combined. If the USA able to transfer even 1% of each military budget to support neighboring countries, it would do an incredible amount of good, both in a humanitarian sense, as well as being wise strategically and geopolitical point of view. So far, more than 159 million Americans have received several $1,000s, so-called economic impact payment due to the COVID-19 from the government, totaling $267 billion. In comparison, one of the Central American nations distributed merely $100 only per family. Just imagine how much more the United States could do with 1% of military budget. At that time, even Madam Moon got a report, and she sent generous fund to support this poor nation. Thank you, Madam Moon. I think the United States foreign policy toward Latin America and the Caribbean should be greatly improved beyond the America First policy. I'm sure Honorable John Doolittle, along with our international chairman, Dan Burton, together, you are the veteran of the capital, should reflect of this situation of Americas. UPF founder Father Moon mentioned time to time that the reason why God blessed America was not for herself alone, but for sake of the world. We will address more necessary steps at the sessions. Lastly, I would like to express my sincere thanks to each and every panelist, especially President Privert. He just came back from his hometown, long way from the capital. Thank you for joining, and President Arteaga as well. And I also wanted to offer a special appreciation to the people who are joining this conference via internet with the people that just as you recovered from the 9/11. Let us hope that we will surely overcome this COVID-19 pandemic with our combined will, the wisdom, and actions for the sake of our people. I believe that this conference will provide insightful ideas and suggestions on creating bright future for the Caribbean, North America, and Latin America as one America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Young. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Very, very insightful. Our next speaker is Her Excellency Rosalia Arteaga, who served as President of Ecuador through a period of conflict in 1997 and has the honor of being Ecuador's first female head of state. She currently serves as a member of the Nizami Ganjabi International Center, a global policy think tank, and has lately contributed an article, The Coronavirus and the Economy, to its journal. Your Excellency Arteaga, you have the floor, please.
Gracias y buenos días. Quiero agradecer la gentil invitación.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the invitation by Universal Peace Federation for this international forum with so many distinguished participants. And warm greetings at all of you who are listening throughout the world, and especially in the Americas and the whole continent, to reflect in terms of leadership and the fundamental aspects that we must address. The crisis that we face now due to the COVID-19 is that call us to reflection to the significance of working together. We could even call it collaborative work, all human beings in different areas of life. In order to achieve this, we require a solid base of values that it should be the top, it should be the priority in our society. It had to do with equality in terms of rights and options. Another important value is honesty, also solidarity, to build better communities. One of the areas in which I've been working all my life, even when I was during the public life in government, or even beyond that, I want to share with you that I started when I was very young, at 17 years old, as a teacher in high school. I never stopped thinking of education as the most important aspect for the world. And even now that I'm not in politics per se, I'm in charge of an NGO working with different countries, supporting various initiatives, strengthening the significance of education. I do believe is crucial. It must state policy. All the governments should take education so seriously. Now, COVID-19 showed us that the governments cannot disregard two areas. One had to do with health and the need to strengthen the system of public health with hospitals which are efficient and with the right medicine and equipment, but also
enfermeras,
medical doctors, nurses, and those who are helping constantly. This is something that the pandemic has taught us. We need to strengthen public health. It is crucial. The other aspect that we cannot deny is education. We know there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of children and adolescents who are outside the educational system. And this is due to the terrible financial economic education of their parents and the lack of the capacity to connect with weapons and tools that would help us to online education. It is imperative to pay attention to three fundamental factors to stop going back in terms of education. And this has to do with UNESCO. It's saying that probably we're going to go back 10 years in education. And these fundamental factors that we need to take care of. Number one, we need to strengthen the capacity and the teaching and the training of our own teachers, especially in the digital world, helping them to know how to teach online. It's not the same to teach them in person that to teach students online. They need to manage platforms and how to keep them attentive online because we cannot manage the work with the same time frame. It will not work. Therefore, it is very important to train our current teachers so they can be teachers online. The other important aspect is the connection. So all of us, we could be connected in Latin America, for example, and probably in the Caribbean as well. There are many rural areas. They're really marginal. They don't have internet access. They don't have access to the internet. So we must acknowledge and we must ask the mayors at the local level to really work on helping people to connect with the internet in the rural area so no child is left behind. The third aspect that is also very important, it has to do with the lack of computers, laptops, cell phones, iPads, all these elements that are so crucial to be able to connect the relationship between both teachers and students given the new modalities. We know that, for example, there's a great amount of cell phones, but not all cell phones are capable to connect online remotely to be in class. So it's very important to have these three elements to train our teachers, connectivity, and fundamental elements to connect, such as technological, digital, such as computers. I could continue saying that we can
que nos ayuden a llegar a todos los lugares y hacia todos los rincones de los países. Por eso tienen que
we need to bring together different technologies,
no solamente no solamente el tema de
not only online, but also
sino también aquello que
that they could be considered teleeducation.
la utilización de
So through television and also radio, so education via TV and radio. So we're not only talking about distance learning, but also include TV and radio. We can't forget about them. Another important aspect, what continues to be the impact of COVID-19 is the need to create funds, especially So when we enter difficult times financially, economically, we have these funds to be able to help those in need. So when we have a great time, we need to learn Latin American countries to create these funds so we are ready when the time comes to enter in a crisis, financial crisis, economical crisis. For example, when the oil price goes up, the commodities go up. So it's important to have these funds that are there in case of emergency, in case of critical situation, as the one that we're facing now, such as this global pandemic. And we know those who suffer are the most vulnerable. That's why this is indispensable. There's another topic I can't forget, and had to do with the corruption. Corruption is a cancer for democracy. So it is very important that we focus ourselves in the significance of strengthening those values, those core values, in order to overcome corruption and fight against corruption. That's why education, again, is a key element. It is the basis. And that not just any education, but values-centered education throughout all our countries to strengthen democracies in our region, have more equality and more access to the state funds. I believe that despite the disaster caused by the COVID-19, it could be a good opportunity to build a new world, a better world, based on these new fundamental elements, as CEPAL is teaching us, and as well as United Nations. We have this wave of hunger that is coming to Latin America. It's a wave of hunger and unemployment coming to Latin America that is going to be so worse because of the COVID-19. So my call is that instead of a wave of hunger, have a wave of hope. And I hope that these spaces, like the UPF is bringing together, could be this space of coming together to give us a type of solution and having the capacity to help different countries so they can build a better world. Thank you so much. I hope and I wish you all well and good health. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Your Excellency Arteaga. Very thankful for your insightful comments this morning. And I'm sure we have a lot of work to do. And I look forward to reading your article. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Our next panelist is from Haiti. His Excellency Jocelerme Privert, who served as acting president of Haiti 2016 and 17, and also served as Minister of the Interior, Secretary of State for Finances, and Director of Tax Administration. Monsieur Privert, vous avez la parole. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Franco. Greetings to Dr. Yang, Dr. Arteaga, and all the panelists, all those who participate to this conference. The coronavirus is one of the biggest challenges that today we are facing in the world. It has come to even trouble our certitudes and destabilize us. It's one of the best illustration of the mondialization and how quick man can move from one side to the other world and how the world is interconnected. This pandemic, no region, no economy is sheltered from the consequences of this pandemic, even the most developed economies?
Looks like we're having a technical issue. He has lost his connection. Okay, at this point, so we have a technical issue, and because of that, I would like to move to the next session. We'll come back. As you know, one of our panelists was to be His Excellency Juan Guaido of Venezuela, the interim president. Unfortunately, due to the chaotic situation in Venezuela, he cannot be with us this morning. Hopefully, we will hear from him in the very near future when the situation is more stable. So at this point, I will move on to our next speaker, my good friend, the Honorable David Kilgore from Canada, who was first elected to the Canadian Parliament in 1979 and served as Deputy Speaker and Secretary of State for Latin America and Africa, and also for the Asia Pacific. He is the past chair of the Latin America and Caribbean Policy Working Group of the Canadian International Council, and he is an avid human rights activist all over the world. Honorable Kilgore, the floor is yours.
Merci Franco, chers amis, sœurs et frères, et bon dias. I have to, all of us know what we were doing on this date in 2001. Permit me to mention that ministers from all of the Organization of American States countries were meeting in Lima that morning when the towers were struck, and we were there to pass a democratic charter for the Organization of American States, and I'm very happy to remind you that we did pass it. And that was a morning that none of us can ever forget. However, time is very short, and I will get to my prepared remarks. Congratulations to the UPF on their 15th anniversary. Thanks to the founders, Mrs. Moon and the late Reverend Moon, for the honor of participating today. The three pillars of the UPF, interdependence, mutual prosperity, universal values, are timely as our global family passes through a pandemic, which my World War II veteran friend, Alex Paulowin, age 95, terms the most disruptive event of his entire life. Globally, COVID-19 continues to wreak havoc on our health, food resources, and economies. The only good feature is that it has improved global hygiene against other illnesses. Amazing people have stepped forward during the crisis. This, quote, rare season of human solidarity, as the Slovak-American filmmaker Annabella Zigova puts it, has been seeing which institutions, countries, and fellow human beings really care. Frontline health workers everywhere carry the heaviest burdens and risks from COVID-19. One that I know works in an intensive care unit of a big hospital in Ottawa and has 3 children at home. Another who cares is food bank volunteer Glenn Pearson of Canada, who quotes the UN predicting that 265 million people could face food insecurity worldwide. And when hotels, restaurants, and so on close, the need for products diminish, leaving some growers no choice but to basically eliminate their surplus. Fully 3.7 million gallons of milk are dumped daily, and 750,000 eggs are smashed weekly in the United States alone, which is a tragic waste when 30 countries are facing famine. The national leaders whose, as you all know, respective citizens are emerging from the pandemic fastest and least damaged are women, who put health before the economy and assertive leadership styles. One of our panelists today, Dr. Serrano, former president of Ecuador, notes that these women are successful because of their empathy, their sensitivity, and their ability to multitask. They listen to health experts and scientists and then take decisive action on the best available evidence. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern imposed early self-isolation on all entering her country. She didn't take the World Health Organization's advice not to close airports to foreigners and moved to lockdown when New Zealand had fewer than 150 confirmed cases. As of September 5th, ladies and gentlemen, there have been 24 deaths in New Zealand. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen stopped the spread of COVID-19 by speedily closing her country to visitors from Wuhan and later from all of China, and accessing citizen travel records for health checks. Enhanced hygiene and public disinfection measures were enacted so quickly that a lockdown was avoided in Taiwan. If the World Health Organization and its member nations had adopted Taiwan's practices in confronting COVID-19 in early 2020, many of the 26.6 million confirmed cases and 875,000 deaths worldwide to date could have been avoided. With just 492 COVID cases and only 7 deaths, Taiwan's schools, shops, hospitals, and transportation have remained open for its almost 24 million residents. Barbados, under Prime Minister Mia Mottley, has had just 7 deaths. It recently launched a new welcome stamp, an invitation to work remotely from her island paradise. South Korea is also a model to emulate in slowing the epidemic without lockdowns or taking authoritarian measures, although it currently is bracing for a resurgence. It has the best organized testing programs in the world, combined with extensive efforts to isolate infected people and trace and quarantine their contacts. The UPF's Mrs. Hak Jahan Moon has provided leadership and voluntary work, I'm happy to mention. Germany, led by Angela Merkel, was one of the first in Europe to begin fast-track tests for antibodies. Terming the virus Germany's greatest challenge since World War II, she's been able to keep fatalities to 9,401. Simon Tisdall notes that authoritarians make the worst leaders in a pandemic by mishandling their responses and placing political interests ahead of public safety and health. China's Xi Jinping, for example, not only purposefully miscommunicated on COVID-19 from the get-go, but also blatantly is using the pandemic to advance its totalitarian goals, as evidenced by the so-called sedition legislation now applicable in Hong Kong and beyond. Chinese authorities had acted 3 weeks earlier. The UK university study concluded the number of coronavirus cases could have been reduced by 95%. And its geographic spread limited. Since 2001, the Beijing Party state has directed a network of organ pillaging from prisoners of conscience, primarily Falun Gong, but also Tibetans, Christians, and Uyghurs. From 1 to 3 million Muslim Uyghurs are currently confined to concentration camps and have been blood tested as if for organ transplant purposes. Fortunately, a UK independent tribunal headed by Geoffrey Nice will soon probe Uyghur genocide allegations against the Xi government. In May, Premier Li of China noted that 600 million people in China live on a monthly income of about $190 or less. Economist Thomas Piketty's book, Capital and Ideology, just released, reveals that in 2015, China's top 10% had 41% of all income, while the bottom half took in 15%. Autocrats have so failed the COVID challenge that the world might hopefully begin to reverse the trends towards authoritarian governance. Overall, democracies have responded well because their citizens feel that such governance works for them. They trust it and rally around a national effort to cope. The lesson should hold true long after the virus has been contained. Hopefully, we aren't entering another Cold War with China and Russia. There's still a great deal of two-way trade, although the pandemic has taught us not to be dependent on China. At a recent UPF conference, Professor Nancy Wei suggested re-China that, quote, contentious coexistence as a likely near-term feature. US Ambassador Chris Hill stressed the importance of good global citizenship. Francis Fukuyama, formerly of the National Endowment for Democracy, notes, quote, we aren't dealing with the China of the 1990s or even the 2000s, but a completely different animal representing a clear challenge for our democratic values, and quote, we need to hold it at bay, close quote. We might issue at this conference, friends, a call for global unity to confront the issues of the pandemic and China. The UPF can make a difference in fostering multi-sector international cooperation at a new level. Let me end on a faith and values note. Faith is the power to lift with words and belief without needing a visible hand to hold it up. A friend referenced a quote from the Rockefeller family creed, quote, I believe in the supreme worth of the individual and in their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe that truth and justice are fundamental to an enduring social order. Love is the greatest thing in the world, that it alone can overcome hate, that right can and will triumph over might. My friends, these are principles for which good people stand and for which many of them suffer and die. They are universal values which help our post-pandemic world to recognize the interconnectedness of all humans in our human family and the need for peace on our planet. Thank you. Merci. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Honorable David Kilgore, for these very perceptive comments and for reminding us of the importance of our faith and our values in these circumstances. And at this point, I'd like to go to our neighbor, the United States, our neighbor to the south and to the north. I have the pleasure of introducing Congressman John Doolittle, who served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1991 to 2009, and currently serves as chairman of North America for the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace. In Congress, he served as Secretary of the House Republican Conference and as a deputy whip. Currently, he heads a governmental relations firm in Washington, D.C. Congressman Doolittle, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Famularo, and thanks to those who commemorated the 19th anniversary of the attacks on 9/11. I was at the Capitol the day that happened and felt the ground rumble, and a few minutes later observed the smoke coming from the west, which was in the direction of the Pentagon, where the airliner was crashed into that building. It was truly a tragedy, and I guess it just, as we speak about peace, it acknowledges that one of the ways we achieve peace is through strength, both military strength, but the strength of character as well, which I'll address. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to express my appreciation to Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, who in partnership with her late husband, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, was behind the growth and development of the Universal Peace Federation over the past 15 years since they founded it. In particular, Dr. Moon founded the International Summit Council for Peace, whose session we are attending now, as well as the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace, in which I am active. There is no other organization like this one today that seeks to eliminate the causes of global conflict over such an enormously wide spectrum of disciplines and spheres of human endeavor among so many nations. Dr. Moon has shown a singular and unselfish dedication to serving humankind through projects such as this global webinar, and I'm honored to work with her and this great communication effort to promote peace. I also want to thank the men and women of this panel of the International Summit Council for Peace for their deep thinking on issues of the Americas and their hearts of good faith toward bringing the nations of our hemisphere closer together in greater cooperation in all activities. I spent 2 years in Argentina from 1974 to 1976 as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The experience was full immersion in the culture and language. It was an interesting time to be in Argentina, but not an easy time. It's a beautiful country and a rich country with great natural resources, and I love the people. I got to see firsthand what happens when an economy gets out of control and fiscal policies are put in place that trigger runaway inflation. The issues of this century continue to plague the Americas as a whole. There are the usual environmental challenges. Political divisions seem to have grown sharper and more exaggerated, not just in the United States, but many other places as well. The divide between rich and poor, while improving in some places, is still very substantial. As a member of Congress for nearly 20 years and with another 11 years working in Washington as a consultant, I recognize that unity throughout the Americas directly affects the well-being not only of the United States, but indeed the whole world. It's no secret why nations like Russia, China, and Iran have been seeking for some time to establish strong relations with the nations in South and Central America. They understand that if they could come between us and undermine our North-South cooperation for peace and security, they could weaken the United States. What are the core values that will allow our nations to prosper together? The Universal Peace Federation's principles of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and shared values are the basis for cooperation between nations. Two shared values that bring us together are religious freedom and faith in God as a foundation for our societies. Faith and the understanding that our rights come from God allows us to be strong in protecting all people's rights. The most essential value to make our nation strong is respect for family values and marriage. Strong families create strong societies. Strong marriages are proven to impart to our young people the values of love, faithfulness, and loyalty. The family is the absolute cornerstone of the social structures of South and Central America. Loyalty to one's family there is known the world over. For our hemisphere to prosper, we must uphold and protect these values more strongly in the United States. For a nation to be strong, there must be good governance and sustainable economic development. That's why the core teaching of Dr. Moon, live for the sake of others, is so important. Corruption is antithetical to good governance and comes from putting oneself first. Selfishness destroys the unity and the spirit of cooperation, which is why our faith and family traditions are fundamental to preventing corruption. With cooperation between our nations, I foresee an amazing economic breakthrough in trade and technological development. We should strongly invest in the education of our youth in this era of cyber development, which would allow the countries of the Americas to become technological leaders of the world. We should always remember that having a job is the best form of welfare ever devised, and that policies in our nations that foster job creation and economic growth are essential to good governance, that socialism defeats it. In fact, we would do well to bear in mind the observation of the great Winston Churchill, quote, "Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery." End of quote. Through cooperation, we can unleash the unlimited genius in our young people. We will see new industries and economies grow where they seemed impossible before. We also must recognize that there are forces and even nations that want to see democracy and freedom destroyed. and will use any means to that end, including terrorism and the destruction of life. The more we can develop a common cooperative destiny, the more our nations can protect one another. Finally, we should cooperate together to see that the final showdown between the communist, God-denying way of life in North Korea and the free, God-affirming way of life in South Korea comes to a peaceful resolution. We begin with meeting together regularly and often. I think that half of our solutions lie in not remaining strangers. The presence of each in the lives of the other needs to be developed in every sphere, not just political and economic, but social and cultural as well. We follow a variety of different faith traditions, but we all worship the same God. We need to increase our awareness of each other's strengths and needs. Instituting fair and balanced trade policies that benefit both parties is very important. We don't need more empty posturing and face-saving accords that nations pay lip service to, but which they do not, for the most part, honor. We don't need more international regulations from outside our borders. We don't need more bosses. We need freedom. We need more brotherhood, more humanity toward one another. We all need to think about who we are, who our neighbors to the north and south are, and what we can do to meet each other halfway in a spirit of openness and friendship as we progress toward achieving the objectives of increased interdependence, mutual prosperity, and shared values. We have one name. We are the Americas. May God continue to bless and watch over us.
Thank you very much, Congressman Doolittle. Very much appreciate your commentary on these important issues, and we very much look forward to you participating in the Q&A in a few minutes. But at this time, I believe we have His Excellency Jocelerme Privert, who has returned to us from Haiti. Monsieur Privert will speak in French, so please look forward to, please adjust your settings so that you can get translation into the languages that you wish to listen to. Monsieur Privert, vous avez la parole.
Merci. Encore, je remercie les participants.
Thank you for all the participants and panelists. I'm so sorry, technology really is disturbing me. No nations, no region, no economy can avoid the problem and the consequences of this pandemic. All the planets, so the most developed countries even are those who had also the most people who died because of the pandemic. So the head of states of those countries will have to really learn the lesson of that and adjust their response. This pandemic is showing how we are vulnerable and the limits of our technology. Even we have an amazing technology, still the virus even is now spiking again in many countries that thought they had overcome this crisis. The Latin America and the Caribbean are among the region that has 100,000 people who died and more than 7 million people infected. So we have l'espoir et l'opportunité in this crisis. Our continent has many weakness, structural weakness that were there already before the crisis. Or in this moment of crisis, as we are going through now, and especially those who are the poorest, are those who are the most now hit by that. On the social side, Some country like Uruguay have some climate and have strong social stability, but Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, and even Haiti that have gone social movements because they were asking for better social life. So different countries are impacted differently. In our region, we have a weakness of the medical system. Latin America was not prepared for such a crisis. So we have many consequences. Beyond the public health, this pandemic brings a very strong economic crisis with many consequences, closing down of many factories and schools, and a lot of employment. Schools are closed, and so the most defavorized are the most touched by that crisis. So we have to make some deep reform. That's the challenge that we have to face. The most vulnerable socially are the most exposed. The confinement, if it was necessary to limit the propagation of the sicknesses, the pandemic, has also caused many financial troubles in many families. So the small economies of the region need to respond in a better way. And also after the COVID, even after the COVID will come down, there will be many financial troubles that we need to face. This pandemic has no borders, no difference between big and small countries. So all the populations have to face the same opportunity. We can create a regional progress, a regional research, and to bring together all the excellence from the region. Which country in Latin America is the best position to discover the vaccine? This is the opportunity to create a society with more solidarity, less injustice, a society more resilient, better prepared to face the collective challenges. Our capacity, our abilities to cooperate together is tested by this crisis. This crisis is a wake-up call that we need to really think more large and come together. The management of this pandemic should not make us forget the big challenge of our society. We have the hope to build a world of peace. This is a race that millions of men and women from all continents and all generations have tried to build. But still, it could not stop all the conflicts of social and wars around the world. Man always has had to go through wars, and crisis is as old as the history of humanity. To speak about peace, the great threat is the explosion of anger of millions of citizens in the world. Social injustice, poverty, and the incapacity of government to answer the aspiration of those population. There are some, this is the rejecting the corruption, changing of systems are become the leitmotif for protestation, for demonstration in many countries of the world. This health pandemic has shown that peace can be built in such a situation, in this very difficult situation. Still, many people could see the wider picture and still endure many difficulties but unfortunately, many governments could not readjust their force to bring down those conflicts. So we need to bring affordable solutions to solve the crisis. In all our small countries of the Caribbean region and Haiti have many problems like Venezuela and others. But other countries too, who were supposed to be stable countries, have also many social, in Chile, in Bolivia. It shows that the threat to peace is very present in our region. Politics in the various governments must really prevent and mitigate all the conflicts and promote the development of not only to develop the inequalities and diminish the tensions, social tensions. Also, civil society must face this, so there must be choices for their own country. They will be to develop wisdom and patience and be courageous to take act against violence. There are many reasons for violence and conflict. So the leaders of the civil society and all social categories, and so they must go to fight together all the problems of the society. And so more peace and more security will be able to be developed. And so that this hope is also what we want. We hope next generation will be able to. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Merci, Honorable Privert. Thank you, Your Excellency Jocelerme Privert, for your impassioned commentary, and we really appreciate your call to action here. At this time, I'm very sorry about the technical issues that we've had, but just for your information, we have close to 700 participants at this point, plus those who are on YouTube that we haven't counted yet. So quite a broad participation from all over the Americas. I have the pleasure to introduce my good friend, Dr. Michael Jenkins, who is the International President of the Universal Peace Federation and also the Regional Chair for North America. He's Chairman of the Washington Times Holdings, who are the owners of the Washington Times, and former Director of the Middle East Peace Initiative devoted to conflict resolution projects in Israel and Palestine. Dr. Jenkins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Famularo, for your fine work to lead us through this wonderful program. Greetings to the distinguished heads of state and other distinguished panelists. Sincere thanks to our conference host, Dr. Walsh, Dr. Young, UPF Chairman of Central America and the Caribbean, and Reverend Dongmu Shin, Chair of UPF South America, and to all of our audience throughout UPF of North America and all the Americas. I want to thank our distinguished panelists too, Her Excellency Rosalia Arteaga Serrano, and also His Excellency President Privert, and Honorable David Kilgore and Honorable John Doolittle, who's also, John is a close friend, and we work together. As we've all been struggling with the crisis of the pandemic, we can see more than ever that the cooperation of our nations is critical to the recovery of our health and our economies. Interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values are the basis for cooperation between nations. In terms of interdependence, the trade in the Western Hemisphere is over $1.9 trillion. It is one of the largest trading blocs in the world, and the more we cooperate together, the more mutual prosperity becomes a reality. What is unique to the Western Hemisphere is that we share common values, as the religious foundations of our nations are based on Christianity, both Catholicism and Protestantism. Though other parts of the world share this heritage, the fervor of faith in the Americas and in the Caribbean is very strong. And these Christian traditions now embrace with respect Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and all faith traditions. And this is a blessing to all to bring harmony among faith traditions. Because of that foundation that is common in the Christian faith, there's a respect for all faiths and religious traditions in the Americas. And there's an understanding, a most fundamental understanding, that God is our creator and our parent and the source of all of our values and our principles. Through our UPF experiences with the Middle East Peace Initiative, Dr. Young and I found faith leaders are of great importance to be a bridge between peoples when political discourse or conflict is at an impasse. Even in the most tense time, faith leaders can continue communications to find common ground between enemies. These religious foundations are the basis for human rights and equality. Today, we remember the tragedy of 9/11. I was there with Dr. Young and many of you. And if the foundations of unity of Christianity with Islam and Judaism was much stronger at that time, this possibly could have been prevented. That's why we began our program, like our opening ceremony today, with Interfaith Prayer. We all share the value of family as centrally important as a common ground value and cornerstone for a good society. Strong marriages are proven to impart to our young people the values of love and faithfulness and loyalty. What is the most essential key to a strong family? That the husband and wife love God and love each other faithfully. That is why, to further strengthen marriage, Father and Mother Moon have instituted the blessing as a universal ceremony in which the husband and wife pledge to never divorce and never be unfaithful. And they make this pledge in their own faith tradition before God. With the blessing, the families gain great fortune for happiness, security, and prosperity, and divorce plummets. When the leaders of nations have strong families, like the prestigious leaders here, and when they have strong, loving families, then it is natural that when they live for the people of the nation the way they live for their families, then the nation can become one family. Father and Mother Moon spent over 40 years in North and South America due to the Christian foundation. They saw the cooperation and unity of our nations as meaning more than just the cooperation of nations, but a spiritual cooperation between Catholicism as an elder brother and Protestantism as a younger brother. And that would strengthen reconciliation in the world. The Middle East, and from the Middle East to the Korean Peninsula, we believe that when the faiths come together, there is some kind of an internal or cultural change in the hearts of people. As we know, the scripture says you reap what you sow. In the Americas, we see these great traditions getting closer and closer together. And in the Western Hemisphere, they are alive and strong. Mother Moon is promoting the unity of the Americas and also the unity of all Christian faiths that will increase the family values culture needed to make a better world. Father and Mother Moon also encourage the exemplary heads of state like those here to see a vision of the nations of South and Central America and the Caribbean being united strongly as one common family, in which the influence of the Americas would be a most positive influence for peace in the world. The partnership between all the nations of America can make the strongest moral force as well as a force for economic development, security, and peace for all people. I believe the blessing of God could really pour out for the Americas. Mother Moon sees the health of the world's environment tied to South America and the Pantanal, which they spend tremendous amount of months and even years going there back and forth. That Pantanal region and that whole area of the Amazon above are often referred to as the lungs of the earth. We have to protect our environment. Father and Mother Moon spent enormous time in Leyda, Paraguay, and in the jungles there at Fort Olimpo. So many presidents and prime ministers from Latin America have come to support their work, because it wasn't only teaching and conferences, it was action to develop food resources and cooperation in industry and business and unity of all peoples and all races. That's why they founded the Association for the Unity of Latin America, and strongly believe the unity of North America with Latin America and the Caribbean will be a foundation that will be able to bring the values of strong family, faith, and freedom to the whole world. They strongly believe the unity of the nations of America will bring peace and security to the whole world, and even resolve the Korean conflict. Yes, aid from America and cooperation from North America is critical. And I think as we have more of these conferences and come together with people like Congressman Doolittle and Congressman Burton, we can help through the UPF and through the International Summit Council for Peace and the International Association for Parliamentarians for Peace to work with the US Congress and with the parliaments throughout the world. And we can increase the cooperation among our nations and increase the projects that we can work together to give economic development and also peace and security for all. Thank you very much for your support and leadership for the International Summit Council for Peace.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins, for your vision, for your wisdom, and for all that you say, which is clearly based on a lifelong experience with all these issues that we're facing. And it's been a great pleasure to listen to our distinguished group of panelists this morning. Depending on where you are, I know it's afternoon or morning in the Americas, but we know that there are people watching from all over the world, because participants are here from Asia Pacific, from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and all the countries in between. So I'd like to give a big round of applause to all our panelists and all our participants for participating on this historic day, September 11th, 2020. Thank you all. And we will now pass on to questions. Thank you to the speakers for having been so careful with their time. I'm so impressed. And we have time now for some questions and answers. There are many, many questions that have come in, and I would just like to start with you, Dr. Yang, if you would unmute yourself. Dr. Yang, you shared the surprising news that China has been the first country to rush forward, and the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean during a recent hurricane damage and sending free of charge corona test kits. Do you have some concrete suggestions how to convince the United States to pay more attention and allocate more resources to help the people of Central America and the Caribbean? Yeah. Dr. Yang.
Thank you for questions. Actually, through my traveling Caribbean and the Central Americas, I found those factors, and also I've been communicating with our field. So as I mentioned, it is true. So not only even Dominica, even other countries as well, even smaller countries of Grenada. So China has their own strategical idea. We know that, but I'm a little concerned, American, like USA foreign policy. That's why I pointed that out. And definitely, USA and North America has enough power to help, not only just financially, but to embrace of Latin America and Caribbean. I think we better more positively concern our neighboring countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yang, for commenting. The next question is for Congressman Doolittle. Is Congressman Doolittle still here? I know that he had to leave soon, but okay, Congressman Doolittle, I know you've got a plane to catch soon. So you spoke about how Russia, China, and Iran have been trying to develop relations with the nations of Latin America, but with a motivation for political gain and less for humanitarian reasons. How do you see UPF's role in raising awareness about nations that want to destroy democracy, and in particular through your efforts with the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace?
Well, thank you. That's an excellent question. And as we all know by the name of the organization, the Universal Peace Federation, peace is its ultimate objective. And we achieve peace through strength. And knowing about the activities of these nations is one of the first steps, I think, in order to inform ourselves and to raise awareness. And as we continue to have these sorts of opportunities for international cooperation, just to recognize that there are ulterior motives of these nations, all I consider to be threats and dangerous, and we must be informed. And when we recognize efforts made in one of our countries to try and do something, I think we should be careful and verify that the motives are genuine, and that whatever the project is something that will further peace and not in some way detract from it.
Thank you, Congressman Doolittle. It's a complicated issue, no doubt, and I'm sure that Her Excellency Arteaga, I would like to ask you from the panel here, can you share more about how your country, Ecuador, has been dealing with the pandemic, particularly in remote areas that don't have access to the internet and medical care?
Thank you. I want to add something about Honorable Doolittle said. I'm absolutely convinced that most of the initiatives that China and probably other countries are having around Latin America has to do with an strategic political position. And we have to pay attention and to be more carefully. During the last government, the past government in Ecuador, for example, we had a lot of external debt with China, and it was a terrible risk. Now this government is changing a little bit the focus on how to have more help from other countries. And I strongly believe also that United States has to pay attention more to Latin America. It has to be done. More attention for Latin America from the United States and from all the countries from Europe, Western Europe, have to pay more attention. If not, it's going to be too late, I'm afraid. Well, about how we are dealing with the pandemic, we had several troubles. Even that Ecuador was one of the first countries that take the decision to house isolation, to be known on the streets, to use masks and all this kind of stuff. We had terrible problems with the pandemic, like most of the countries on Latin America, not only in the big cities, but also in the rural area. And about the consequences on education, I feel that we can do more, but we can wait more also from the international cooperation about connectivity and about how to do with the tools, with the devices that we need, especially in rural areas and in urban areas that are really affected. Because now in Ecuador, like in most of the countries of Latin America, these students are not allowed to go to classes, to presential classes. We have to maintain the kids and the teenagers at home and to receive classes on distance, like online. And it's not always possible because of problems with connectivity and also with the devices that they are not available, especially for poor people. I am doing the possible. I lead an NGO in Ecuador, and we made some kind of agreements with UK platforms, for example, to train teachers in the use of platforms, and also to have the access to repositories in terms of knowledge. But we need to do a lot more, and I hope we can do it with the help of organizations like UPF and others to help very poor people in extremely danger and risk to be out of school. And in terms of health, it's the same problem. Our hospitals and our medical centers, they don't have all the instruments and all the tools to help poor people. We are trying to do more, but it's always needed the help and solidarity of other parts of the world.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Very much appreciate, and I'm sure that by stimulating the conscience of the leadership of our societies, we can do a lot more. I have questions now for His Excellency Privert and also for Honorable David Kilgore, so please hold on. Monsieur Privert.
You describe this as a wake-up call that we must manage together. What instruments and best practices to deal with the pandemic are coming from regional cooperation?
I express that solidarity is very necessary for that. Haiti is a small country, cannot face alone that big challenge. It needs the support of the regions, and especially the America, the United States, have helped a lot to mitigate the effect of this pandemic. The risk that created, hopefully we did not have as many people who died as we should. Only 9,000 cases were infected. So we don't know what to say thank you. But Haiti is a condition where the conditions are not good. And also many people did not really follow the protocols they should, but still it's somehow out of this crisis better than many other countries. But because of the international solidarity, the support, financial support, especially the United States and the European Union, really help us to face the crisis and protect the population only medically and.
Merci. Thank you. I have two more questions here, and I think we're going to have to wrap this up here. Honorable David Kilgore, you spoke about universal values and the need for global connectivity. Can you address how Canada has been dealing with the pandemic, and how has Canada been drawn closer to other countries or nations as a result of the pandemic?
Oh, that's a big question. How long have I got? No,
I'll give you 4 minutes.
Well, I actually read about pandemic every day, all day. Do we talk about anything else but the pandemic? When I mentioned that my friend Alex Pollowan, who's 95, and he can't remember anything worse than the pandemic in his whole lifetime, including the Second World War, where he was on a naval ship in English Channel and up to Murmansk. I think 8 times he went up there. And he thinks this is the worst ever because we don't know when it's going to end. I don't know about all of your countries, but in Canada, some provinces have done extremely well, British Columbia, I believe. And some of us haven't done so well. So Canada is not really in a position to give leadership I don't think at this point to other countries, when countries like New Zealand and Taiwan have done Germany, Denmark have done extremely well. Maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. I know that was a challenging question. I have a question for Dr. Jenkins, and then I'll open the questions to any of the panelists.
Dr. Jenkins, you spoke about the shared heritage, particularly based on our faith traditions among the nations of the Americas, both North and South, Latin America and the Caribbean. How do you see the role of religious leaders in this time of emergency?
Well, I think as we have seen with UPF, the International Association for Peace and Development is causing a family type relationship to grow and grow. Even one of the excellent Catholic cardinals from Central America, many leaders of the Catholic faith are joining together with the Protestant faith. We're embracing one another. There's huge breakthroughs occurring because also we see that those challenges to our society often are challenges that are coming from a secular or materialist perspective that simply want to push God over to the side and say all of our solutions come from material solutions, and they never work that way. The problem really goes back to strengthening the family, and our values coming from our faith traditions are so important. Love, loving your enemy, loving your family, and building a good family in the image of God. And that's why dialogue is so important. The World Clergy Leadership Conference was founded by Mother Moon, and primarily it was composed of religious leaders from Roman Catholic and Protestant faiths from North and South America and Central America. It's very strong. And also Europe too, but mainly more North and South America and Central America. So I think that movement is also to help complement the work of our political leaders, our heads of state, as well as our members of parliament. So UPF now has associations that are reaching into to every sector of society so that we can encourage and support with these high values. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, and thank you all for participating in this session. As I mentioned, this is the second of 9 sessions. The next one is with parliamentarians. Then we have religious leaders. Then we have academics. We have women of distinction, the first ladies. We have business leaders and the media. Each of these sessions will take place over the next 3 days, today, tomorrow, and Sunday. I'd like to thank all the technical staff and everyone that has participated so diligently, many pro bono, many doing this as a public service, as have our speakers today, and Dr. Jocelerme for collecting all the questions, and everyone here that has been so dignified and so gracious in every respect. So I'd like to wish you all a great day. Thank you for participating in this significant gathering on this significant day of 9/11. May you be blessed. May you be in peace. May you be safe. And let us solve the current crisis together. God bless you. Wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.